You want to scream, don't you? Your lungs are full, your chest is tight, your mind's racing, and your blood's on fire. You want to spit rage in every direction. You want to tell them what they did. You want to make them feel a fraction of the pain they carved into you. But let me ask you something. Has screaming ever worked? Ever fixed anything? Ever brought peace? You shout, they laugh. You explode, they label you insane. That's the setup, see? They push you to the edge just so they can point when you fall. But here's the trick, you don't fall. You go quiet. You freeze the chaos. Because the loudest weapon in this world, it ain't your voice. It's your silence. A cold, ruthless silence that burns through guilt and regret, louder than any curse you could spit. You think they'll sleep easy after what they did? Nah. They'll lie awake, haunted by the silence you left behind. Because silence, it forces people to listen to themselves. And most of them hate what they hear. They betrayed you, didn't they? Played sweet while you gave them your all, and when the tables turned, they dipped. No warning, no explanation. Just a ghost trail of what did I do wrong looping in your head. Let me break it down. People like that don't care how much you gave. They only care how much you let them take. You gave time, love, energy. You gave second chances, third ones, forgiveness no one ever earned, and they took, like leeches. And now, they walk around acting like you were the problem, like you were too much, too clingy, too intense. No, you weren't too much. They were too little, too weak to handle loyalty, too shallow to recognize real love when it stared them in the face. But here's the part that stings. They'll only understand your worth when your silence wraps around them like a noose. Not your anger, your absence, not your texts, your ghost. That's how you make them feel it. Not by chasing, not by proving, but by vanishing. I know you want to break something. Trust me, I've been there. Wanting to scream until your throat tears. Wanting to smash mirrors just to silence the reflection. But that rage, it feeds them. It gives them a sense of power. They think, look what I made him do. That's why you stay calm. That's why you don't react. Because when you're calm in the face of betrayal, in the middle of chaos, that's when they panic. They expect the explosion. But when you fold your arms, crack a slight smile, and walk away without saying a word, that's when their whole act crumbles. They can't figure you out. They can't predict you. And nothing scares a manipulator more than a person who doesn't give them a reaction. That's when your silence becomes a mirror, and every dark, dirty thing they did stares right back at them. You gotta understand this ain't weakness. This ain't cowardice. It's a cold kind of war. A war where your weapon is discipline. You shut down the urges, bury the need to clap back, and instead, you focus. You grind. You elevate. You go so far up they can't even see your shadow. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about making them cry. It's about making them irrelevant. They thought you'd crawl. You fly. They thought you'd beg. You build. And the silence you left behind, that's what rots them from the inside. That's what echoes in every laugh they fake, every post they make, pretending they're fine. But they're not. They're just loud. And the loudest ones? Always hiding the biggest regrets. You know what's funny? The same people who swore they'd never leave are the ones who packed up first. And the louder they loved you, the quieter they slipped away. No explanation, no closure, just a cold retreat, like you never meant a damn thing. And the world tells you, move on, don't dwell, forgive. But tell me, why is it always the one who got hurt that has to carry the burden of healing? Why is silence expected from the broken, but never from the ones who broke them? I'll tell you why. Because society's scared of the truth. And the truth is this: some people don't deserve forgiveness. Some betrayals don't deserve kindness. And some wounds don't close with time. They just scab over and itch every time a name gets mentioned. You don't owe them peace. You don't owe them understanding. What you owe is yourself. You owe yourself the silence to rebuild. The silence to focus. The silence to rise. Because when you're done rising, when you've become everything they mocked, everything they doubted, they'll sit there in their cheap little lives, choking on the silence you gifted them. And trust me, that silence will scream louder in their head than any rage ever could. Let's be real, they didn't break you because you were weak, they broke you because you were pure. You gave love like it mattered. You trusted like it meant something. You didn't play games, you showed up. You stayed. And in today's twisted world, people don't know what to do with that kind of loyalty. They mistake it for desperation. They label it as clingy, but deep down, they fear it because they know they'll never match it. So they run, not because of you, but because of what you reflect. You hold up a mirror to their cowardice, their emotional poverty, their inability to love without strings. And when they look at you, all they see is what they're not. So they disappear. And they pray you'll chase them. They hope you'll beg. But here's where you change the game. You don't chase. You sit with the pain, you carry it in silence, and you turn it into power. No tears they can see, no calls they can reject. Just a quiet, focused storm. Because storms don't scream, they destroy quietly. And that's who you become, a quiet destroyer. Not of people, but of limits, of weakness, of everything they told you you'd never be. You want to know when they'll feel it? Not today, not tomorrow, but one random night when the world's quiet and the noise fades, they'll remember. They'll remember how you never needed attention, how your silence wasn't emptiness, but depth. They'll scroll through old memories, hear your name in a song, feel your ghost in their peace, and it'll hit them like a brick wall. Not because you shouted, not because you cursed them out, but because you said nothing. You just left, And the world hates that. People crave closure because it gives them control. When you say nothing, they spiral. They create stories in their head, excuses, lies, justifications, anything to make them feel like they weren't the villain. But deep down, they know. And every time they see you glow in silence, succeed in silence, evolve in silence, it burns. That's the kind of pain no argument can deliver. That's the pain they'll never escape. Because silence doesn't fade like words. It lingers. It poisons every what if. And the more time passes, the louder it gets. That's the justice you serve. Cold, quiet, unapologetic. You were never crazy. You were real in a fake world. You gave depth to people who only knew surface. You gave warmth to people who were ice from the start. And when they couldn't handle it, they ran. But here's the twist. They didn't run from you. They ran from the mirror. Because when someone like you enters their life, it exposes them. It shows them everything they lack. They didn't break you because they hated you. They broke you because they hated how much they needed you. And when they lost you, they lost access to that version of themselves they only became when they were with you. That's what you were, a light. But sometimes the wrong people can't stand the light. It blinds them. So they destroy it. But the joke's on them, because you don't die, you don't fade, you transform, you rebuild. And the silence you now carry, that's not defeat. That's evolution. That's the sound of someone who finally understands their worth. And when that happens, when silence becomes your language, the world starts listening. Even the ones who said you were nothing. Let's talk about control, because that's what this whole game is really about, isn't it? They controlled how you felt, how you thought, how much you gave, and how hard you begged. They made you think love had to hurt, like loyalty had to bleed, and you swallowed every bit of it. You let them stretch your heart until it cracked, just for a drop of attention, just for a sliver of the warmth you gave them daily without hesitation. That wasn't love. That was a leash. And they held it tight every time you tried to breathe. You think silence is hard? No. What's hard is realizing you were a slave to their validation, that you danced for a little bit of approval, like a fool begging for scraps. But when you shut your mouth, when you stop explaining, stop proving, stop defending, that's when you take your power back. Silence ain't weakness. It's a reset. It's the death of the old you, the one who tolerated too much, cared too fast, loved too deeply. It's the rebirth of the version of you who watches, calculates, and walks away without turning back. That version is dangerous. They wanted you to snap. They needed you to. Because if you did, they could point and say, "See? That's why I left." But when you don't, when you go calm, it drives them insane. They expected rage. They got silence. They expected fireworks. You gave them a blackout. Now they're sitting in the dark, alone with their guilt, and it's clawing at their soul. And don't think they moved on. Oh no, they're just pretending. Every smile they post is a cry for attention. Every "I'm doing great" is a cover for the void they're drowning in. Because real peace doesn't look loud. It doesn't need an audience. You never see a lion explain why it stopped roaring. It just walks silently, and the whole jungle feels it. That's what your silence becomes. A roar no one hears, but everyone feels. And let me tell you something ugly. People don't break what's weak. They break what's strong and giving. They test you, not because you're easy to destroy, but because they want to see how much damage they can do before you finally say enough. And when you finally do, it shakes them. Because your silence is not empty. It's loaded. It's got every truth you never said, every tear you wiped alone, every night you bled for someone who couldn't even spell loyalty. And that silence, it'll follow them. It'll whisper in their ear when they're lying next to someone new, pretending they're happy. It'll echo in their thoughts when they compare every smile, every conversation, every feeling to the way it was with you. And nothing will compare. Because you weren't a phase. You were the best they never understood. The kind of soul people spend lifetimes trying to find again. So you stay calm. Not because you don't care, but because you've realized that your energy is a currency, and you wasted enough of it on people who didn't even deserve eye contact. Now you keep it close. You invested in silence, in growth, in making the version of yourself that no one can touch. Not out of revenge, but out of evolution. You don't become cold. You become selective. You don't shut down. You just stop letting clowns rent space in your palace. Because that's what they were. Noise in a life that needed peace. And now that you've found it, you protect it like gold. No arguments, no explanations, just silence. The kind that kills egos. The kind that turns tables. The kind that makes them regret ever thinking you were disposable. You hear me? You don't shout. You build. You don't chase. You focus. You don't try to prove your worth. You become it. And when they finally see you again, richer, stronger, colder, calmer, they won't say a word. They'll just choke on everything they never said. That's the beauty of silence. It needs no announcement. It needs no apology. It's the final message, delivered without a single sound. You want to know why silence hurts more than anger? Because anger is temporary. It's loud, it's messy, but it burns out. People get used to it. They expect it from someone who's been disrespected. It gives them a script to follow. Calm down. You're overreacting, and I didn't mean it like that. They turn your pain into a punchline and your reaction into ammunition. But silence? Silence leaves them with no script, no role to play. It removes the stage. Now they're alone with nothing but echoes, haunted by every word they thought you'd say, but never will. They try to reverse the blame, twist the truth, but your silence offers no resistance. And that's what traps them. You're not giving them a fight. You're giving them a mirror, a damn clear one. And the reflection is brutal. It's raw. It shows them who they really are without the comfort of your forgiveness to hide behind. They say time heals, right, Lieutenant? Time exposes. Time peels the paint off fake intentions. And the silence you keep, it becomes a weapon time sharpens. Every day they don't hear from you. Every moment they realize you're not watching anymore. It eats at them. At first they pretend they don't care. They convince themselves they moved on, that you were never that deep. But silence is a seed, and guilt, that's the soil. Over time, it grows roots. And when it blooms, regret becomes a forest. And by then, you're already miles away. Different city, different mind, different soul. The you they broke is gone. The new you doesn't even flinch at their name. That's not just revenge. That's evolution. And they'll never catch up. You're not here to fix people anymore. You're not here to make them see your value. If they didn't get it when you were giving them your soul, they sure as hell don't deserve it now. That version of you who explained everything, who tried to make them feel safe while you were dying inside, that version is retired. The new you understands that peace is earned, not given. And if someone costs you that peace, they cost too damn much. Let them call you cold. Let them say you switched up. Let them lie to everyone about what happened. You stay quiet. You stay still. Because people who scream the loudest are usually covering the biggest mess. But the ones who stay calm, they already cleaned house. You've cleaned yours. Now you keep the door locked. You were the lesson they didn't want to learn. You were the blessing they weren't ready to handle. So they mishandled you. Broke you in places that still ache when you're alone. And yeah, sometimes that silence isn't power. It's pain. The kind that gnaws at your ribs when no one's looking. But you sit with it. You own it. Because if you can survive that kind of silence, yours and theirs, you can survive anything. You don't run from the emptiness. You let it shape you. You let it build a new foundation where no one can walk in and tear it all down again. Your silence isn't a prison. It's a rebirth. A transition from being someone's option to being your own priority. So don't send that message. Don't post that quote, hoping they'll notice. Don't replay the memories like a broken record. Let them wonder. Let them choke on the silence you've mastered. And when they finally reach out, when they finally realize what they lost, you won't even be the same person they left. You'll be colder, stronger, cleaner, and silent still. Because by then, your silence won't just hurt, it'll end them. Here's the part no one tells you. Silence isn't easy. It's war. It's waking up with your chest heavy and your mouth shut. It's biting back the urge to explain yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. It's watching them live their lives like nothing happened, like they didn't dismantle your trust piece by piece and walk away like they'd never touched it. It's screaming inside while you wear a straight face, nodding, smiling, pretending like the storm inside you isn't loud enough to break glass. But here's the power buried in all that pain. The longer you stay silent, the louder your absence gets. They start to feel it. They notice you're quiet the same way someone notices air getting thinner. And suddenly, it's not you begging for answers. It's them drowning in questions. Why did he stop talking? Why doesn't he care anymore? Why does it feel like he's not even angry, just gone? That's when they start to spiral. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. And that's the cruelest irony. Your silence does what your words never could. It exposes them. See, you gave them a version of yourself that most people don't get. Real, raw, present. You showed up when it was inconvenient. You stayed when you were tired. You forgave what broke you. You gave them access to your soul, and they treated it like a free trial. And now they're looking for you in every new person, hoping to find a fraction of the peace they felt in your presence. But here's the truth, they won't. Because you don't come in copies. You don't come in replacements. You were one of one, and they knew it. But comfort makes people stupid. They think they'll always have time to fix it. They think you'll always be there, waiting, loyal, silent, but still reachable. And then you go quiet. Not for a reaction, not for attention, but because you're done. Because you finally accepted that your value isn't up for debate anymore. That's when the game changes. That's when they lose. Not when you screamed. Not when you cried. But when you stopped. You don't need closure from someone who slammed the door in your face. You don't need apologies from people who sleep peacefully while you stay up thinking. You don't need explanations from cowards who couldn't even look you in the eye when they left. What you need is silence. For them, it's a punishment. For you, it's a detox. Because talking to the wrong people too long poisons the soul. It dilutes your purpose. It keeps you small. And you weren't made to be small. You were made to shatter ceilings, to outgrow environments, to silence rooms just by walking in. But that version of you only exists when you kill the noise. So you do it, slowly, brutally. You cut the cord. You stop explaining your worth. You stop apologizing for being deep in a shallow world. You stop giving CPR to connections that were dead long before you admitted it. That's not weakness. That's self-respect. And it's about time you started wearing that like armor. Let them wonder what changed. Let them talk behind your back. Try to fill in the blanks with their own twisted versions of the story. Don't correct them. Don't clarify. Don't break the silence. That silence, That's your power now. That's your empire being built brick by brick in the quiet. That's your mind healing, your heart hardening, your spirit sharpening. And when the time comes, when you step out of the shadows and show the world what silence built, they won't recognize you. And they'll pretend they don't remember what they did. But you will, and you'll walk past them without a word. Because some people don't deserve a second glance, let alone a second chance. There was time. Silence was your weakness. They thought not responding meant you were broken, that your silence was surrender. But what they never realized is that silence is strategy. It's the art of stepping back while they dig their own grave. See, people who live for attention can't handle being ignored. You deny them the drama, deny them the feedback, deny them the spotlight, and you strip them bare. You strip them of the illusion that they were in control, that they mattered enough to affect you. And when they don't get a reaction, they panic. They'll try everything to poke the fire, throw dirt on your name, bait you into snapping, because they need to know they still matter. And when they don't, when you stay calm, when you don't even flinch, that silence becomes a mirror they can't escape. Suddenly they're not just dealing with losing you. They're dealing with the fact that you're no longer giving them the one thing they crave most: significance. You've erased them without lifting a finger. And that right there is power. You want real strength? It's not lifting weights or flexing muscles. It's not shouting louder or fighting harder. Real strength is sitting in your own pain and not letting it turn you bitter. It's carrying betrayal on your shoulders and still choosing not to become like them. It's watching people who hurt you smile like nothing happened and refusing to let their fake peace interrupt your real growth. It's being silent, not because you're scared to speak, but because you choose not to. Because the cost of engaging with them again is too high. They've already robbed you of peace once. You won't let them rent space in your mind for free again. So you go silent, not out of fear, not out of pain, but out of calculation, because you finally realize that some wars are won not by drawing swords, but by never showing up to the battlefield. They underestimated you. They thought you'd fall apart without them, thought your world revolved around their presence, their attention, their fake promises. But now they're starting to feel that shift, that vacuum where your energy used to be. They're scrolling through old chats, playing back old calls, stalking your silence like it's a crime scene, and still nothing. No message, no reaction, no meltdown. Just you, living, quietly, moving forward without needing to announce it. And that, my friend, is the worst kind of karma. Not the loud, theatrical kind, but the slow, haunting realization that they were forgettable in the life of someone unforgettable. You didn't beg. You didn't explode. You didn't threaten. You just disappeared. And now they're left with nothing but the hollow sound of what used to be. Don't break your silence for closure. Closure is a lie. It's a sweet word people use to justify reopening doors that were meant to stay shut. The real closure is silence. It's waking up one day and realizing you haven't thought about them in hours. It's walking past the places that used to hurt without flinching. It's hearing their name and feeling nothing. That's closure. And it doesn't come from a final conversation. It comes from cutting off the energy supply that fed the connection. It comes from going cold, calm, detached, and staying that way no matter what storms rage around you. Because you've learned something priceless. Your peace is worth more than their presence. And you'll never sacrifice it again for someone who didn't even know what to do with your love. They'll talk. Oh, believe me, they'll talk. Whisper your name in rooms you're no longer in. Try to make sense of your silence, like it's some kind of disease. He just stopped talking. He changed. He thinks he's better now. No, you didn't change. You returned to yourself. You didn't think you were better. You became better. You didn't stop talking because you had nothing to say. You stopped because they were never really listening. And that's the part that burns them most. Not your absence, not your glow up, not your silence, but the fact that now they are locked out of your world and you're not even looking back. You walked away without a goodbye, and that quiet exit will haunt them more than 1,000 screamed farewells ever could. They'll replay it in their heads, looking for signs, clues, some hint of when you gave up. But you didn't give up. You grew up. You realized some battles aren't worth fighting. Some people aren't worth convincing. Some doors need to stay shut, not because they're locked, but because what's behind them no longer has power over you. And while they're busy talking, you're building in the shadows, in silence, in places they'll never see. That's the beautiful thing about quiet growth. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't post updates. It doesn't need claps or cheers. It just happens, slowly, relentlessly. While the world thinks you've disappeared, you're sharpening, healing, elevating. And one day, they'll look up and realize you're 10 levels above the version of you they tried to destroy. Not because you fought to prove them wrong, but because you stopped fighting completely. You learned the most brutal truth of all. Your best revenge isn't destruction. It's distance, not making them pay, but making them irrelevant. You don't burn bridges anymore. You let time do it for you. Quietly, thoroughly, without ever needing to look back at the smoke. You don't owe them understanding. You don't owe them softness. You don't owe them one more moment of your energy. That was the old you, the one who bent, broke, compromised just to keep dead things breathing. But the new you, the silent you, he doesn't negotiate with guilt. He doesn't hand out explanations like candy. He doesn't plead for clarity in a world that feeds off confusion. He just walks, focused, disciplined, unreachable. Because silence isn't about shutting others out. It's about finally hearing yourself. It's about making space for the voice inside that used to be drowned out by everyone else's noise. And when that voice speaks, it tells you everything you need to know. Who you are, what you're worth, what you will and will no longer tolerate. That voice is your compass, and it doesn't yell, it whispers. But only the calm can hear it. You don't miss them. You miss the version of yourself who tried to believe in them. The you that still held on to hope when the red flags were waving like parades. The you that saw potential when all they ever showed was patterns. That version of you, he was kind, he was pure, but he was also naive. And he died the moment you chose silence over chaos. The moment you realized that begging someone to care is the loudest form of self-betrayal. Now, you don't beg, you don't explain, you don't wait. You just keep moving, quietly, coldly, like winter. And winter doesn't announce its arrival, it just replaces everything. And now you see it, don't you? The silence isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's control. It's peace in a world addicted to chaos. Everyone's out there screaming, posting, reacting, needing to be seen, needing to be heard, needing to prove something. But you've evolved. You've stopped feeding that fire. You've realized that real strength doesn't need an audience. Real strength sits still while everything burns and doesn't flinch. You let the noise pass. You let the storms rage. And you don't move. That's what separates you now. You're no longer the man who gets pulled into the drama. You're the one who watches quietly, lets people bury themselves in their own noise, and doesn't even waste a breath helping them out. That's not apathy. That's precision. That's awareness. Because now you see who's worth your voice and who isn't worth your silence. They'll try to come back, you know. They always do. Not because they love you, but because they hate the fact that they lost access to you. You were comfort. You were sanctuary. You were the only one who saw their darkness and didn't run. But instead of holding you close, they played with you, thought you'd never leave, thought you'd always be available. They gambled with loyalty and lost. And now that you're gone, now that your silence has carved crater in their reality, they're gonna try and crawl back in. Little messages, little games, little crumbs dropped just to see if you'll chase. But you won't, because you know better now. You know that anyone who makes you beg for basic respect is already gone. Anyone who forces you to explain why you deserve love is already dead in your story. And your silence, it's the tombstone. You don't go back to fire just because it used to keep you warm. You don't reopen wounds just because they've scabbed over. You don't hand your soul back to the same hands that cracked it. You stay still. You stay focused. You let your silence build a kingdom so high that the ones who used to mock you now have to look up just to see your shadow. And they will. They'll see it. They'll scroll past your progress. They'll feel that pit in their gut every time your name gets mentioned. And they'll lie to themselves, say they're over it, say they never cared, say you were just another chapter. But you and I both know they're still stuck on the page where you went quiet, still waiting for the next sentence, still wondering if maybe, just maybe, you'll break your silence. But you won't, because what would be the point? They already told you who they were, and you finally listened with your silence. There's beauty in not reacting. There's power in not explaining. And there's a brutal kind of peace that comes from knowing you have nothing left to prove. That's who you are now. You're the silence after the storm, the calm after the chaos, the ghost they created when they chose games over honesty, pride over love, fear over loyalty. And that ghost, it doesn't haunt to hurt, it haunts to remind. It lingers in every quiet moment of their life, whispering, you lost something real. And the worst part? They know they'll never get it back. Not because they can't reach out, but because even if they did, you've already closed the book. And let's be real. Your silence isn't just absence. It's a statement. A final one. It says everything they refused to hear when you were still speaking. It says you had your chance. It says I begged you with my loyalty, pleaded with my patience, screamed with my consistency, and you ignored it. So now you get nothing. No replies, no explanations, no windows into who I am becoming. They don't get to see the healing, the rising, the rebuilding. They don't get to know the man you're shaping yourself into through the fire they lit. That's the justice of it all. Not rage, not revenge, but growth. They're not invited to witness. Your silence becomes the locked gate to a kingdom they helped destroy. Now rebuilt, stronger, higher, more impenetrable than they could have imagined. They thought they'd left you broken, but they didn't know. You were just quietly assembling a weapon. And this weapon you're building, it ain't for destruction. It's for domination. Domination over the doubt they planted, over the fear they fed, over the weakness they saw and exploited. Because now you don't speak to be understood. You move to be undeniable. You don't explain who you are. You show it in your walk, in your work, in your silence. You've stopped chasing peace in people who thrive on chaos. You've stopped watering dead connections. You've stopped apologizing for feeling too deeply in a world that fears anything it can't control. And that silence, it's no longer a pause. It's your language now. It's how you tell the world, watch me. Not with words, but with action, with discipline, with the relentless, unforgiving grind of a man who learned the hard way that not everyone deserves his voice. You used to fill the space with explanations. You tried to make them see, tried to make them feel. You kept giving and giving, thinking if you just loved hard enough, they'd change. But you finally learned some people don't want love. They want power. They want control. And once they know you'll break yourself into pieces just to keep them whole, they'll never stop asking. So now, you give them nothing. No more answers. No more access. No more soul-shaking vulnerability handed over like spare change. Now you sit in your silence like a throne, because that silence, that's your crown, forged in betrayal, shined in isolation, polished by every sleepless night where you wanted to scream but didn't, where you wanted to fight but walked, where you wanted to beg but stayed still. That silence holds your power. And the ones who underestimated it, they're already drowning in its weight. People like them. They never see the storm coming. They think silence means they won, that they got away with it, that their lies worked. But the truth is, they mistook your grace for weakness. They mistook your patience for permission. And now, they're standing in a world where you no longer exist. Not for them. Not in memory. Not in energy. Not in anything. Because you've upgraded to a life where their name doesn't even echo. And the silence they thought was a void, it became a fortress. One they'll never penetrate. One built on every "I'm fine" you said when you weren't. Every "it's okay" you whispered when it damn sure wasn't. Every second you swallowed your truth just to keep the peace. That peace, it's yours now. And it's not shared. It's sacred. Guarded by silence sharper than any blade.